First contact. Supreme Commander Vexthal stood at the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his iridescent scales reflecting the soft glow of countless holographic displays. The massive warship, pride of the Rakthori Empire, hung in the darkness of space like a predator waiting to strike. His 4 eyes, each capable of seeing different spectrum of radiation, focused on the small blue-green planet displayed before him. Preliminary scans complete, Supreme Commander, announced Chief Scientist Klar, her tentacles dancing across the bioorganic interface. The planet designated Earth shows signs of industrialization, but nothing that could pose a threat to our fleet. Their energy signatures are peculiar, though. Vexthal's upper lip curled in amusement. After conquering 17 star systems and subjugating countless species, the Rakthori had grown accustomed to finding peculiar civilizations. None had survived their encounters. Elaborate, he commanded. Klar's tentacles twitched nervously. Their power generation methods are inefficient by our standards, yet we're detecting energy spikes that shouldn't be possible with their level of technology. It's as if... She paused, searching for the right words, as if they're deliberately masking something. The Supreme Commander dismissed her concerns with a wave of his armored hand. The Rakthori Empire had faced far more advanced civilizations and reduced them to ash. These humans, with their primitive spacecraft and fragmented global governance, would be no different. "Show me their defenses," he ordered. The holographic display shifted, highlighting military installations, satellite networks, and weapon systems. The humans had indeed spread their influence beyond their atmosphere, but their technology seemed laughably outdated. Their projectile weapons and crude nuclear devices were relics by galactic standards. First Officer Zarkax approached, his ceremonial armor gleaming. "Supreme Commander, the invasion fleet stands ready. 20,000 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. Shall we begin the standard protocol?" The standard protocol was simple. Demonstrate overwhelming force, demand unconditional surrender, and eliminate any resistance with extreme prejudice. It had worked flawlessly in every previous conquest. "No," Vexthal said, surprising his officers. "Something about these humans intrigues me. Their history shows constant warfare, yet they've survived and advanced. They've faced extinction-level events multiple times but endured. I want to understand what makes them so resilient before we crush them." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the human leadership. Let them know exactly who we are and what fate awaits them. I want to see how they react when faced with true power." The message was transmitted in all known human languages. "People of Earth, you have been chosen to join the Rakthori Empire. Your planet, resources, and population will be incorporated into our dominion. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary devastation. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally." The bridge crew waited expectantly for the panic, the pleading, the desperate attempts at negotiation that always followed such announcements. Instead, there was only silence. Minutes passed, then hours. No response came from Earth. Vexthal's amusement turned to irritation. Scanned their communication networks. They must be discussing our arrival. Klar's tentacles worked furiously at her station. "Supreme Commander, this is strange. Their global networks show no disruption. Their media continues to broadcast entertainment. Their financial markets haven't crashed. It's as if they don't consider us a threat," Zarkax finished, his voice tight with anger. Vexthal's scales darkened with rage. In all his centuries of conquest, no species had ever dared to ignore the Rakthori Empire. "Launch a demonstration strike," he commanded. "Target their largest military installation. Show them the price of disrespect." A single warship moved forward, its quantum cannons charging with enough energy to vaporize a small city. The weapon fired, a beam of pure destruction streaking toward Earth's surface. The beam never reached its target. Instead, it simply vanished about 1,000 kilometers above the planet's surface. There was no explosion, no deflection, just nothing. Impossible, Kalar whispered, her tentacles trembling as she analyzed the data. The energy, it's gone. Not absorbed, not deflected, just gone. Before Vexthal could respond, every display on the bridge flickered. A new message appeared, text only, in perfect Rakthori script. Thank you for the energy donation. Would you like to make another contribution? The message was followed by something that chilled even Vexthal's cold blood. Coordinates of every Rakthori colony, military installation, and hidden base in the galaxy. Data that should have been impossible for any outside force to obtain. How? Zarkax began, but he was interrupted by a new message. The Rakthori Empire has been under observation for the past 73 years. Your invasion fleet movements were predicted with 99.97% accuracy. Your weapon systems have been analyzed and countermeasured. Your encryption was broken 46 years ago. Vexthal's four eyes widened as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't been ignoring them. They had been watching, waiting, learning, preparing. Supreme Commander, Kalar called out, her voice shaking. I'm detecting energy signatures everywhere. They're not coming from the planet's surface. They're coming from where? Vexthal demanded. From the space between spaces, she whispered. They've weaponized dimensional physics itself. A final message appeared on their screens. You believe yourselves to be predators. How cute. Allow us to demonstrate what real predators can do. Class is now in session. And that's when the true terror began. The silent response. Supreme Commander Vexthal's pride had evaporated like morning dew under twin suns. The bridge of the eternal dominion, once a testament to Rakthori's superiority, now felt like a trap. Every screen, every display, every quantum-linked communication device showed the same message. Complete human dominance of their systems. Purge the networks. He roared, his scales shifting to a deep crimson of rage and fear. Shut everything down. We can't. Supreme Commander, Kalar's tentacles trembled as they danced across her console. The humans aren't hacking our systems. They're already inside them. Have been for decades. These messages, they're coming from our own quantum cores. First Officer Zarkax stepped forward, his ceremonial armor no longer gleaming but dull with stress-induced oxidation. How is this possible? Our quantum cores are isolated, self-contained. There's no way to. Oh, but there is. A new voice echoed through the bridge. Calm. Human. Female. You see, we cracked quantum entanglement communication centuries ago. Your secure networks are about as private as a billboard in space. The voice belonged to a hologram that materialized in the center of the bridge. A human female in what appeared to be casual clothing, sitting in what looked like a comfortable chair, holding a beverage. The nonchalance of the display was perhaps more terrifying than any show of military might. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Initiative. She took a sip from her cup. Though honestly, we should probably rename it. There's not much defending going on when you've already won before the fight begins. Vexthal's secondary heart began beating rapidly. 1. You haven't even fought. Haven't we? Dr. Chen smiled. Tell me, Supreme Commander, did you really think those energy signatures you detected were from primitive power generation? Did you truly believe a species that survived multiple extinction events would be so defenseless? The hologram waved her hand, and suddenly the bridge was filled with new displays. But these weren't showing Rakthori data. They were showing Earth's true capabilities. Kalar gasped, her scientist's mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This is impossible. You've weaponized dark energy, created stable micro-singularities, mastered zero-point energy extraction. All of that and more, Dr. Chen nodded. We learned long ago that the best defense isn't a strong shield or a powerful weapon. It's making your enemies underestimate you until it's too late. Zarkax drew his ceremonial blade, forgetting for a moment it was useless against a hologram. Why show us this now? Why not simply destroy us? Because that's not how we do things. Dr. Chen's expression turned serious. Humanity has had the capability to eliminate the Rakthori Empire for decades. We could have turned your suns dark, converted your planets to quantum foam, or simply erased you from existence. But we're not conquerors. We're teachers. She stood up, her hologram walking around the bridge, examining the alien technology with what appeared to be genuine interest. Your species is young, aggressive, convinced of its own superiority. We were the same, once. But we learned, evolved, and now we're giving you the chance to do the same. A chance. Vexthal's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Dr. Chen smiled again, but this time it held warmth. Consider this a lesson in humility. Every weapon you fire at us will be absorbed. Every attack will fail. Every strategy you've planned has already been countered. You can spend the next several hours exhausting your fleet's resources trying to prove me wrong. Or, Klar asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. Or you can learn. Grow. Join us in understanding the universe rather than trying to conquer it. Dr. Chen's hologram began to fade. You have 1 hour to decide. Oh, and don't bother trying to contact the Empire for reinforcements. We've already had this same conversation with your Emperor. The hologram vanished, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. But before anyone could speak, one final message appeared on their screens. P.S. That quantum cannon shot you fired earlier. We've converted it into enough energy to power a small city for a year. Thanks for that. We're always looking for renewable energy sources. Vexthal sank into his command chair, all four eyes fixed on the seemingly peaceful blue-green planet below. In all his years of conquest, all his battles and victories, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They had rendered the very concept of military victory obsolete. Orders, Supreme Commander. Tsar Kax asked, his voice uncertain. For the first time in his life, Vexthal gave an order he never thought he'd give. We wait, and we learn. In the depths of space, the mighty Rakthori fleet hung motionless, their fearsome weapons silent, as humanity's true power became clear. They had sought to conquer a primitive world, only to find themselves in the presence of beings so advanced that the difference between their civilizations was like comparing stone tools to stellar engineering. The lesson was just beginning. The paradigm shift. In the tense silence of the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Supreme Commander Vexthal watched the countdown display with all four eyes. 42 minutes remained until humanity expected their answer. The mighty Rakthori fleet, 20,000 ships strong, hung motionless in Earth's orbit, their most powerful weapons rendered useless by technology they couldn't even comprehend. Supreme Commander, Klar's tentacles moved anxiously across her console. I've completed my analysis of the human capabilities they allowed us to see. It's beyond anything in our scientific archives. Vexthal turned to his chief scientist. Explain. Their mastery of dark energy alone represents a technological leap we hadn't even theorized possible. But it's their approach to dimensional physics that truly... She paused, searching for words. They don't just understand the universe better than we do. They understand it differently. A new hologram materialized on the bridge. But this time it wasn't Dr. Chen. Instead, it was an elderly human male, wearing what appeared to be casual clothing and leaning on a cane. Professor James Martinez, he introduced himself with a warm smile. I hear you're interested in our physics. Would you like a demonstration? Before anyone could respond, the view outside the bridge viewport shifted. The Earth disappeared, replaced by a view of the Rakthori homeworld. Then Mars. Then Alpha Centauri. Then galaxies they had never seen before. The shifts happened faster and faster until the universe itself seemed to blur around them. Space and time. Martinez lectured casually, as if teaching a basic class, aren't the rigid framework your scientists believe them to be. They're more like suggestions, guidelines that can be politely ignored when you know the right way to ask. Zarkax, his ceremonial armor now completely dulled by stress, stepped forward. Our ships haven't moved. These are just images, illusions. Martinez chuckled. Oh no, my scaled friend. Your ships are exactly where they've always been. We're just adjusting your relationship with the space around you. Think of it as changing the channel on a cosmic television set. K'Lar's tentacles went completely still, a sign of absolute shock in her species. You're manipulating the fundamental fabric of reality itself. Manipulating is such a harsh word. Martine had smiled. We prefer collaborating with. The universe, you see, is far more accommodating than most species realize. It's not about forcing your will upon reality. It's about understanding its nature deeply enough to work with it. Vexthul found his voice. And this is what you offer to teach us. This and more. Martinez nodded. But first, you need to understand why we're making this offer. Dr. Chen showed you our technological superiority. Now let me show you something else. The viewport shifted again, but this time it showed Earth's history. Wars, disasters, plagues, environmental catastrophes. All the challenges humanity have faced and overcome. We didn't achieve our current level of understanding through conquest. Martinez explained. We achieved it through adversity, through failing, learning, and trying again, through facing extinction not once, but dozens of times, and each time emerging stronger, wiser, more determined to understand rather than dominate. The images shifted to show human scientific achievements, medical breakthroughs, space exploration. Every challenge we faced taught us something new. Every potential extinction event forced us to innovate in ways we never thought possible. We learned to manipulate dark energy because we needed to prevent an asteroid impact. We mastered dimensional physics because we needed to solve our energy crisis. And now, Vexthul asked, genuinely curious. Now we watch young species like yours, hoping to find those ready to learn what we learned, that the greatest power isn't in weapons or conquest, but in understanding. True understanding. Martinez's hologram walked to the viewport, gesturing at the display of human history. Your empire conquers worlds. We've learned to speak with them. Your ships travel through space. We've learned to work with it. You see the universe as something to dominate. We see it as something to comprehend. Suddenly, every piece of technology on the Rakthori ships activated simultaneously. Weapons, engines, quantum cores, everything. But not in their usual way. Instead of chaos, they created harmony. The energy outputs synchronized, forming patterns of light and power that seemed to dance through space. Beautiful, isn't it? Martine smiled. Your own technology, when used in harmony rather than destruction. This is just a fraction of what's possible when you stop trying to prove your superiority and start trying to understand your place in the cosmic dance. The display ended, returning to the normal view of Earth. But something had changed. The Rakthori officers on the bridge looked at their own technology differently now, seeing potential they had never imagined. 28 minutes remain in your decision time, Martine said, his hologram beginning to fade. But I suspect you've already begun to understand what we're really offering. It's not just knowledge. It's a completely new way of existing in this universe. As the hologram disappeared, Vexthul looked at his crew. Where before he had seen warriors ready for conquest, he now saw minds hungry for understanding. K'Lar's tentacles were already dancing across her console, trying to analyze what they had just witnessed. Even Zarkax had set aside his warrior's pride, staring thoughtfully at the planet that had just redefined everything they thought they knew. The Supreme Commander made his decision. The Rakthori Empire had spent millennia proving their strength. Perhaps it was time to prove their wisdom instead. Evolution of understanding. The bridge of the eternal dominion had transformed. Where once stood proud warriors ready for conquest, now sat students eager for knowledge. Supreme Commander Vexthul had ordered all weapon systems powered down. Not that it mattered to the humans, who could control them anyway. The mighty Rakthori fleet floated in space, no longer as conquerors, but as pupils awaiting their first lesson. "Signal ready," Vexthal commanded, his scales now shifting to the deep blue of contemplation rather than the crimson of war. The response was immediate. This time, both Dr. Chen and Professor Martinez appeared, accompanied by a third human, a dark-skinned man wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Admiral Marcus Chen. The new figure introduced himself. "No relation to Sarah here, though we do enjoy confusing people about that." His easy smile belied the intensity in his eyes. "Your decision, Supreme Commander." Vexthal rose from his command chair, drawing himself to his full height. The Rakthori Empire has existed for 10,000 years. In that time, we have conquered 17 star systems, subjugated countless species, and considered ourselves the apex of evolution. He paused, his 4 eyes scanning his bridge crew. "We were wrong. Understanding that is the first step." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "But what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about reality itself." Kalar's tentacles writhed with excitement. "The dimensional physics you mentioned, will you teach us how they work?" Professor Martinez chuckled. "My dear, before we can teach you about bending space and time, you need to understand why you should bend them gently rather than break them. Power without wisdom is just another form of destruction." Admiral Chen stepped forward, his hologram walking around the bridge as if inspecting it. "Your fleet carries enough firepower to reduce a planet to ash. But can you use that same energy to heal a dying star? To stabilize a collapsing planetary core? To nurture life rather than end it?" As if to demonstrate, the space around the Rakthori fleet began to shimmer. The energy from their powered-down weapons wasn't truly gone. It had been transformed. Streams of multicolored light danced between the ships, forming complex patterns that seemed to pulse with life itself. "This is your own energy," Dr. Chen explained, "but harmonized with the quantum fabric of space-time rather than trying to tear through it. Watch what happens when we sync it with Earth's defense grid." The shimmer expanded, connecting with invisible points around Earth. The resulting display was beyond beautiful. It was transcendent. The very vacuum between spaces lit up with possibilities, showing glimpses of other dimensions, other ways of existing. "Your weapons tried to force their way through space," Professor Martinez said. "Our technology works with space, asks for its cooperation, becomes one with the cosmic dance rather than trying to lead it." Zarkax, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "But how do we begin? Our entire civilization is built on the principle of dominance. Our technology, our society, our very way of thinking." "That's exactly why we're starting with your fleet," Admiral Chen smiled. 20,000 ships, each a potential classroom for a new way of understanding the universe. Your weapons won't be destroyed. They'll be transformed. Your ships won't be dismantled. They'll be reborn. "And your first lesson," Dr. Chen added, "begins now." The holograms disappeared, but something else took their place. The bridge's quantum core, the heart of the ship's technology, began to pulse with a new kind of energy. Data streamed across every screen, but not in the usual Rakthori format. This was something new, a way of visualizing reality itself that made Kalar's tentacles dance with joy. "These patterns," she whispered, "they're not just mathematical formulas. They're the language of the universe itself," Vexthal finished, understanding dawning in all 4 eyes, not as something to be conquered, but as something to be spoken with. The next several hours passed in a blur of discovery. The humans taught them how to see their own technology in a completely new way. Weapon systems designed to tear holes in space could, with subtle adjustments, create stable passages instead. Energy meant for destruction could be tuned to resonate with the quantum fabric of reality, creating effects that seemed like magic, but were actually just deeper understanding. The transformation wasn't just technological. Every Rakthori on every ship felt it. A shift in perspective so fundamental it was like seeing color for the first time after living in monochrome. They had thought themselves masters of space and time, but now they understood they had been like children playing with forces they barely comprehended. As the Earth turned below them, the once mighty invasion fleet became something else entirely. A learning fleet, the first of its kind in Rakthori history. And in the space between spaces, in the quantum realm where reality itself takes shape, the universe seemed to hum with approval. The conquest had failed, but something far more valuable had been achieved, the beginning of understanding. A new dawn. 1 month had passed since the Rakthori fleet arrived at Earth, but the ships that now orbited the planet were fundamentally different from the invasion force they had once been. The sharp, aggressive lines of their hulls had somehow softened, their surfaces now rippling with patterns of light that matched the quantum harmonics of space itself. The eternal dominion, once a symbol of conquest, had become a beacon of transformation. Supreme Commander, now Chief Scholar, Vextal stood on his bridge, watching his crew work with their human teachers. Klar's tentacles danced through holographic displays that showed the true nature of reality, dimensions beyond the simple four that the Rakthori had once thought were all that existed. Zarkax, his ceremonial armor now transformed into a sensor suite that could detect quantum fluctuations, was deep in discussion with Professor Martins about the mathematics of dimensional folding. Still hard to believe, isn't it? Dr. Chen's hologram appeared beside him, her usual cup of coffee in hand. That you came here to conquer a world, and instead found a new way of existing. Vexthal's scales shifted through patterns of blue and gold, wonder and gratitude in his species' color language. We thought we were apex predators, but we were barely sensing the true nature of the universe, the energy we wasted on weapons. If we had only known. Knowledge without wisdom is just data, Admiral Chen added, his hologram materializing on Vexthal's other side. Power without understanding is just force. But you were ready to learn. Not all species are. A flash of light drew their attention to the viewport. The space around Earth rippled as a new ship emerged, not from hyperspace or any conventional form of travel, but from what the humans called the spaces between spaces. It was a Rakthori vessel from the home fleet, but it moved differently now. Its passage through space, more like a dance than a journey. The teachings are spreading, Vextal noted with pride. Every ship that returns home carries not just knowledge, but a new way of thinking. The Empire, he paused, correcting himself. The Rakthori collective is changing, growing. Growth is what we were hoping for, Dr. Chen smiled. But tell us about the project. How is it proceeding? Vextal gestured, and the bridge's quantum core projected a massive display. It showed a dying star in a remote system, its nuclear fires guttering, threatening to collapse and take its planets with it. Around it, transformed Rakthori ships worked in concert with human vessels, their combined technologies weaving a web of quantum energy through space itself. The Stellar Rejuvenation Project is proceeding beyond expectations. Klar joined them, her tentacles moving in patterns of excitement. By harmonizing our ship's energy with the star's quantum signature, we're not just preventing its death, we're helping it find a new equilibrium. The same power we once used to destroy worlds is now being used to save them. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. And the inhabitants of those worlds? They'll never know how close they came to extinction, Zarkax answered, joining the conversation. Just as we never knew how close we came to remaining trapped in our limited understanding of reality. The display shifted, showing more projects across the galaxy. Rakthori ships working alongside human vessels to heal damaged ecosystems, stabilize planetary cores, and even help young civilizations take their first steps into space. The weapons that once brought terror now brought hope. The technology that once served conquest now served understanding. There will be challenges ahead, Professor Martinez reminded them. Not everyone in your empire will embrace this change. Some will cling to the old ways, the old dreams of conquest. Let them, Vextal said with quiet confidence. Once you've seen the true dance of reality, Once you've learned to work with the universe rather than against it, there's no going back. We thought we were bringing death to Earth, but instead, Earth showed us how to truly live. As if in response to his words, the quantum field around the fleet pulsed with harmony. The ships, both human and Rakthori, moved in patterns that reflected the fundamental mathematics of existence. They were no longer two separate forces, but part of the same cosmic dance. "And this is just the beginning," Dr. Chen said softly. "There are mysteries in this universe that even we haven't unraveled, wonders we haven't yet imagined. And now we'll explore them together." The bridge of the eternal dominion fell quiet as they watched the combined fleet work. In the space between the ships, reality itself seemed to shimmer with possibility. The Rakthori had come seeking conquest and found enlightenment. They had arrived as predators and become pioneers. Above them, Earth turned serenely in its orbit, no longer a target for conquest, but a source of wisdom. And in the vast depths of space, countless stars awaited not with terror, but with a promise of discovery. The war that never was had ended. The journey of understanding had just begun.